Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Okay. So, first of all, good morning. And I'm very happy because I could join you in this morning. I don't know if taxation is a good topic for a Friday morning, but I wish that at the end of this presentation, taxation also finds a spot in your minds and hearts as it had found on mine. I'm here today to share some thoughts with you about the DS 453, which Argentina measures relate to trade in goods and services. Well, I've waited for almost 20 years for a dispute like that because my work experience always bounced between international trade and international taxation, and it always made me wonder when a WTO member would challenge the use of blacklists consistent with WTO rules, because I could see the developments in both systems, and I could feel that they were not interacting in an effective way. But now it happened. When I first read the request for consultation of this dispute, I decided that it was time to wear backpacks again and go back to college. So here I'm here to present this research, which is in its first step, and my scope is to determine the consistency or not of defensive measures against harmful tax practice and WTO rules, especially GATS. Why did I choose GATS? Because GATS has two specific tax-related general exceptions, one for most favored nation and another for the national treatment clause. Before going through GATS rule, I would like to make some comments on the OECD's work on harmful tax practice. In 1998, the first report was released, and at this point, tax authorities were concerned about tax-based erosion by jurisdictions promoting themselves as a safe place to shift income, offering low or no income tax and secrecy. Now this report is revamped on the Base Erosion and Profit Shift Action Plan, which in short we call BEPS. BEPS is a reaction to multinationals' ability to pay low or even no tax by shifting their income among tax jurisdictions. Amazon, Google, Starbucks were in the media, not only their CFOs, but also tax authorities had a hard time to explain to public how it was possible without breaking any kind of tax rules. Yes, this was a legally shift of income among tax jurisdictions. BEPS Action Plan Item 5 is devoted to countering harmful tax practice by improvement of transparency and substance. The first OECD report focused on geographically mobile activities, like financial services, and established two kinds of tax jurisdictions engaged in harmful tax practice. We have tax havens and preferential tax regimes. Basically, tax havens are states that can finance their activities with no or only nominal tax income. And preferential tax regimes are jurisdictions which raise substantial revenue from income tax but are engaged in some kind of harmful tax practice. The result of OECD's work on the subject was the adoption of global standards for transparency and substance. Transparency is related to both the exchange of information among tax authorities, and the compulsory spontaneous exchange of information on rulings related to the preferential tax regime specific to a taxpayer. The exchange of information among tax authorities allows the identification of connected or attributable to income and its inclusion on the taxpayer's taxable income by the jurisdiction that feels that its tax base is being eroded by harmful tax practice. For example, Subpart F income in the U.S. legislation. The substance standard determines that taxation of an income should be imposed by the jurisdiction where the real value is created. OECD concluded on the possibility of adoption of defensive measures against beneficial tax regimes, and that's the measures that are now being challenged before the WTO dispute settlement body. These defensive measures are economic sanctions applied against tax havens or preferential tax regimes. And now I think that you should be aware of the impact of the DS 453 possible outcomes in international tax systems. All OECD work on the subject is now under dispute. On this slide, I briefly describe Argentina measures that are being challenged. And one of the examples is the use of the blacklist to impose a higher tax rate when the income is derived from transactions between an Argentinian taxpayer and a preferential tax regime. All income will be considered as net profit, and it will be taxed at a higher rate than the normal rate. Now the question that I would like to talk to you about is the characterization of those global standards as international accepted standards. Well, GATT has a definition for relevant international organizations that can set standards, international standards. The international organization should have open membership to all WTO members. Well, OECD is not an open membership organization. Furthermore, now it has only 34 members against 161 WTO members. And even though non-members are invited to participate in the discussions, they have no voting powers. Moreover, the acceptance of those standards was obtained under threat of economic sanctions and the use of blacklisting of uncooperative jurisdictions. So these acceptance is questionable for the lack of democracy and the use of coercive methods for its acceptance. Now, it's worth noting that the crucial question in this talk, that is, why should a state that can finance its activities with no or low income tax should impose tax income and in high rates? Well, this question was not faced by any report. Now we're going deeper on GATT's rules. I will not spend so much time on the discriminatory and less favorable treatment character of those tax measures because defensive measures to counter harmful tax practices are economic sanctions and thus discriminatory and less favorable per se. Now we can go to the next step to assess if those measures are justified under any of the tax-related general exceptions. First, I will talk about the most favored nation tax exception in GATS. This exception targets international tax agreements to avoid double taxation. The measures under dispute are not in any international tax agreement and are not designed to prevent double taxation, but to guarantee tax base integrity. Thus, the discriminatory less favorable tax treatment is not justified under this exception. As a conclusion, we have a breach of the most favored national obligation that is not justified. And now I guess you have no doubts about how important this case is for international tax system. The analysis of the consistency of WTO rules could stop here because I think they are inconsistent. But we are academics and we love the debate. So let's go through the national tax treatment exception. This exception really targets tax-based erosion. For example, you can read the Romanet 4 that allows measures to safeguard the tax members' tax base. However, the justification under this exception is subject to other tests. For example, weight and imbalance, trade restrictiveness, and Argentina will bear the onus of proof. So I think it won't be easy. Now I wish you're really concerned about international tax regime future as the way it's designed today. But maybe it's time for international tax system deal with a very familiar expression in international trade, which is global value chain. Economic activity is spread among different tax jurisdictions following comparative advantage. If economic activity shifts, income will shift. We should not be talking about tax-based erosion. We should be talking about development, which is in the Doha Brown agenda. Moreover, digital economy, financial services included, are a great opportunity of development for small economies because it demands low investments on infrastructure and less labor force. And maybe it's time for international tax system to fix this fact and be a more cooperative system, a more cooperative environment among tax jurisdictions. To conclude, I would call DS 453 as a clash between international trade and international tax systems. And we should keep in mind the different roles to be played by WTO and OECD. We should guarantee the legitimate shift of economic activity because it will generate the legitimate shift of income and the fair division of global tax base. So I think we should not be talking about tax-based erosion, but about legitimate shift of income that should be preserved in the name of development. Finally, I wish that this presentation has impacted your minds and feelings about taxation, because at the end of the day, it's not so bad to talk about it or to think about it. So now I'd like to finish my presentation and say thank you for the opportunity, for the IT group, for allowing me to give this lecture, to show my presentation using Skype. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Mrs. de Oliveira. We want to keep you a little bit to ask you some questions,
Okay.
and I hope you will be able to stay with us for the panel to hear the other presenter if you can. So maybe I will start by a question myself before turning to the floor. I was very interested in the reference that you showed that GATS allowed to make to OECD international standards, and I was wondering how would you say what is the concrete legal effect of that reference? Would you say that it gives basically it incorporates OECD soft law and turns it into some kind of binding or legally more binding norms? Could you dwell more on that specific reference?
Yes. I think that for WTO purpose, OECD is not a relevant organization to settle standards. And for me, the main issue is the lack of democracy. I think we should not consider as international standards that has not been democratically discussed, and which acceptance was granted by coercive methods. That's my point. I think that if we consider this kind of suggestions as soft law or as acceptable or relevant international standard, it would be a very pernicious thing, because it would legitimate the use of sanctions, economic sanctions, to avoid this normal shift of economic activity. Okay. Economic activity now is shifting because we are in a global value chain international trade system. So I think that WTO role is to guarantee this shift of income when it's based on real comparative advantage. So I don't think that one rule that fits all sides is a good way to approach the problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions dans la salle pour notre première conférencière? So thank you very much, Mrs. de Oliveira. We will continue now. Oh, I'm sorry, j'avais.
Okay.
Est-ce que Maryse?
Thank you very much.
Sorry, we have a question, in fact.
It's not a question, it's a congratulation on the topic. I work in Geneva, and the issue of taxation and WTO is a booming issue. And some delegates are of the view that more of taxation should be brought in WTO, where at the moment it's only discrimination that is a topic. And everybody's trying to think of how this could be done. I think you have disappeared.
Okay, thank you.
Are you there? Yes. So I just wanted to congratulate you on searching this matter. It's
Okay, thank you very much.
a good point.